Welcome to a panel session on disaggregation and testing, a reality check. My name is David Hutton. I'm the chief engineer of the Telecom Infra Project. And today we want to discuss the importance of testing in a disaggregated world. And before I introduce the panelists, please let me set the scene a little bit first. So we have multiple different testing activities going on all over the world, from Plugfest to commercial trials. We have many labs that have been set up and created to perform this. However, we're not yet seeing a flourishing ecosystem of commercial deployments of open and disaggregated technology. So the time is right to ask, what can we do to make things more effective? How can we test in a way that is useful to operators and transform the results that happen in the labs and testing into tangible products that can be commercially deployed? How do we build the confidence for the community to start to deploy open and disaggregated network technology? And I'm joined here today by two great industry leaders to discuss these points and more. Firstly, Andreas Gladisch from Deutsche Telekom and the I14Y consortium lead, and Juan-Carlos from Telefónica. Andreas, could you introduce yourself and maybe explain your specific role and focus on test and validation, and perhaps give some background to I14Y?
Yeah, thank you, Dave. Andreas Gladisch, I work for DT Group Technology, and today I would like to explain what the goals and the targets of I14Y Lab are. I'm the consortium lead of I14Y Lab, and this is a consortium of different players in the industry. So there are operators, Telefónica, Vodafone, DT, who are our partner. There are system integrators, Capgemini and Nokia as partner, and there are also a couple of smaller companies active in the Open RAN and disaggregation environment, which are ENTC, High Street Technology, and BISDN. And finally, there are also finally, there are also academic partners, Technical University of Berlin and the Heinrich Hertz Institute of Berlin. And so the goal is to set up a lab that helps the players in the industry to test and validate systems faster, to run a kind of reference implementation which simplifies the testing and which is based on the requirements of the different operators, so that all those solutions are closer to the real products that the operators need.
Great, thank you very much, Andres. And Juan Carlos, perhaps you could introduce yourself. And we know that Telefónica is one of the leading operators looking at open and disaggregated networks. Perhaps you can just talk to that and the importance of what testing, what role that is in this brave new world.
Okay, thank you, David. So my name is Juan-Carlos Garcia. I'm a Senior Vice President for Technology Innovation and Ecosystems in the Telefónica Group. I'm in charge of the collaboration for technological development of Telefónica with different bodies and partners and associations. In this case, we are doing very active contribution and participation in Telecom Infra Project as part of our strategy on open and disaggregated solutions. Now, we have been for many years developing solutions in this area in the different network technology domain. Open RAN is very popular, but we have work and run experiences on open fixed access, open transport, both in optical and IP technologies. Well, we have quite a lot of experience on working with partners on this testing process. It is a difficult one, okay, and it requires to be effective a strong collaboration with the industry. Okay, so whatever effort an operator can do on its own is probably not enough, to reach a level of maturity in the open and disaggregated systems. That is what we need for our networks.
Great. So as you can see, we've got two fantastic panelists to discuss the main points today. So Juan-Carlos, I guess the main question is, we're seeing a lot of testing taking place. We're not necessarily seeing those commercial deployments yet. So what can we do to make testing in this disaggregation methodology more effective?
Well, there are a number of things that we need to do, to get to that goal of being effective, in testing. So the first thing is that operators need to agree on specifications and requirements and prioritize features so that we can ensure that the test systems results are applicable to a wide amount of operators. This way, we will get also that providers can increase their confidence when taking decisions about investing in technology development. On the other hand, we need also agreements on test plans and standardized test cases so that we know not only that something has been tested, but also how it has been tested and what has been tested. We also need to provide a testing framework, composed both of a testing and certification scheme and a network of trusted and accredited labs like I14Y labs or the lab that Telefónica has for testing open and disaggregated transport solutions. And all this is essential to be more efficient and also to understand the level of maturity of the ecosystem and will be fundamental to support operators in their procurement processes.
Okay, so coming together as a community to set, I guess, a common baseline for what needs to be tested and how it can be baselined and measured against to move the whole of the industry forward together. Excellent. Andreas, your views?
Yeah, so that is exactly the right observation. So disaggregation creates a lot of additional interfaces that have to be tested and validated. And if we look to the question how to bring all those solutions close to the real production environment, that also means that we must rethink and redesign how we collaborate in the testing and validation field. Why? So we must minimize the number of parallel testings, and we must agree on scenarios and use cases that are relevant for most of the operators. And finally, also very relevant for the efficiency is automation, and to find common solutions how to automate the tests. So sharing and automation is key here.
That's an important part as well. I think automation is definitely required, and tools needing to be developed around that. And I also like what you say, Andreas, about looking at the commercial priorities of the operators to make sure that we're reflecting that and building the ecosystem. So that leads me on to the next question then, Juan-Carlos. How can we test in a way that is useful to the operators, that benefits their priorities and transforms that level of testing and those results into real products and systems that you have confidence to commercially deploy?
Well, that's a great question. Well, I think we need to mutualize the efforts and need to share the results. So we need a coordination of the different testing facilities in such a way that what one lab is doing is something that others can benefit from. And there are a few labs for integration, validation, and testing. We need to make the most of this few, and in this direction, we need to coordinate in a way that the test cases that are developed by one of the labs are also used by the others, that the testing of a certain component or the integration of several components or a full system is done by one of the labs, is not repeated by the others, and that the final results produced by one of them are assumed as valid by the others. So all this is part of the testing and validation framework. And this way, labs would be complementing each other by sharing activities and results, and also to the point that we will help operators that are not so engaged in all this process of testing and validation.
Great. And then, Andreas, I mean, as you said before, the I14Y lab is a consortium. How does that benefit the operators, and how do you influence that?
Yeah, so as I've already mentioned, there are 3 operators partner in I14Y, and these operators are a subset of the MOU group. And I think the MOU group did a great job with the first steps to release common requirements that are relevant for all those operators. And we take these common requirements, develop it further together with Telefónica and Vodafone to bring it even closer to the practical use cases that are relevant later for the rollout. And in doing so, we hope that we can simplify the tasks for the partners and so for the vendors and the industry in one sense, and that we also can contribute to the broader ecosystem, because the I14Y will release all those results or share the results with the broader community. And the other interesting thing is, with the I14Y lab and with the setup, there's also an opportunity for early testing, because industry academic partners are here and complementing the industry partners with their work.
Okay, great. So kind of centralizing that level of testing instead of everybody doing it on a bilateral basis pulls together the resources and kind of like a test once, deploy many scenario. Is that what you're describing, Andreas?
Yeah, exactly. So I think everybody in the industry knows this test effort, and just to build such a lab creates enormous costs. And to minimize the costs for most of the partners, and even to enable smaller operators or smaller companies to utilize such an infrastructure, that is one of the goals of I14Y.
Okay, great. So then, I mean, in terms of where TIP kind of plays a role here, we can propagate those standards that are developed by organizations like 3GPP, organizations like O-RAN Alliance, and bring together, players within that community from operators, vendors, system integrators, labs themselves. This is something that TIP can do and has done to build that community. But for defining those specifications and reference scenarios, is this where the operators have to play that central role? What do you think, Andreas?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and that the operators must agree regarding the common requirements and the common interests. They even must agree about the use cases. And as I said, the MOU group has done a very good first step, and also related, by the way, to the I14Y lab. So there's also an important role for organizations like TIP and other. So because someone must aggregate, or one organization must aggregate the different results and the different requirements from different geographical regions. There are more operators than just the MOU group or the partners in the I14Y. So, and that brings us to the point who makes sure that the certificates and the badges are comparable and have a relevance for the industry. And that is definitely an organization like TIP, a neutral organization that can work with different labs globally.
Yeah, and I guess the same question, Juan-Carlos. I mean, Telefónica and yourself, actually, you're on the board of TIP, and O-RAN in O-RAN Alliance on the board there as well. So what is the role of that centralized role that the operators will play?
Well, operators, as Andreas mentioned, we play a key role in setting the requirements, of the systems that we have to test, and this is very, very important. We need to contribute as well with test use cases and orient the labs in testing the important features that we will require to be tested, because before taking a system into production, into a real network. And we will have, in the extent that is possible, based on the skills and capacity of the telecom operators, to provide the facilities and the activity of testing and validation wherever it is possible. Again, if the operator has the skills and capacities to do so. And finally, a significant amount of collaboration so that we run a coordinated work of testing and validation with other labs. And here is where we need a TIP, TIP to coordinate all these network of labs, ensuring that all of them work based on the same framework for testing and integration and validation. And finally, that there is a kind of accreditation of these labs, no? That TIP is somehow be able to label them as labs that follow, the procedures and the way of working that is defined in the framework. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, based on those open standards that are being developed by 3GPP and O-RAN Alliance, TIP is building those types of blueprints that are based on the commercial operator requirements, the real use cases, the primary, I guess, deployment scenarios that we need to focus on to help to stimulate the market. And because I think that we've seen that the technology is valid, it's working. We've done that early stage proof of concept level testing. We've done the lab testing. We've done some trials. But now I think it's time to move to commercial scale. And to achieve that, I think within the TIP community, we believe that providing that commercial grade level of testing is something that is missing at the moment, and what we're striving to do. In fact, certification of those systems, for example, an Open RAN system, is going to be required to achieve that level of commercial scale. So it sounds like we're all agreeing and we're all on the right path. So I know we're running a little bit short on time, but just one more question for you guys. Say we meet again, or we meet at Fuse in October, or Barcelona in next year in MWC in 2024. What do you expect to have achieved, I guess, as a community, by that time when we meet again and have our next panel discussion next year?
Okay. Well, if you want me to start,
yes, please.
Probably in next event, being Fuse or Mobile World Congress, as you say, that we can announce at that time that we have the system release certification process in place and consolidated already with a set of labs that are already supporting it, that we have the TIP test and validation framework in full production, and that while we have already a big number of batches, more than 50, I think, batches and ribbons in optical transport systems, I would like to see, in Open RAN, batches in the order of hundreds, at some point in time. And all of this supported on the results, hopefully coming down to a set of procurement processes in place worldwide for first scale deployments in brownfield. Okay, and I would say these are probably the 2 or 3 headlines I would like to see in future events to show that really Open RAN is consolidating and that the testing and certification program is working.
Great. I love it when you set goals that we need to deliver on, Juan-Carlos. Andreas, do you agree? Where do you see us in a year's time?
Yeah, so I 100% agree. That was a perfect explanation. And just let me add one sentence from the perspective of the I-14Y lab. So in 1 year, one of the permanent test setups based on the specifications, test specifications of a couple of operators is an operation, and we release the first TIP certificates. So that is where we will stand in 1 year.
Great. Well, thank you both for spending time with me today. And I'm looking forward to seeing you face to face at our Fuse event in Madrid in October. So thank you for joining, and we'll see you then.
Thank you, David. See you.